Hey everyone, what's up? Simon from Galaxies.dev back with a new tutorial on React Native today. I recently tried to implement a JWT authentication with React Native and it actually wasn't too easy to figure out the right steps. But once I had it, everything was super easy. So I'm gonna walk you through the steps of creating an authentication context and provider, working with the API with a login and registration functionality, and how you can use the Expo secure storage to manage your JWT and store this in a secure place. If you want to check out the code, link right below the video, and definitely also check out the rest of our courses on Galaxies.dev, which is all about exploring the edges of the web dev universe. So make sure you check it out, hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss the future videos. And now without further ado, let's build our React Native app. Alright, so let's get started with the app. I'm gonna start with the TypeScript template of Expo because, well, we should just use TypeScript at this point. And then I installed a few packages. So I installed Axios. I know you can basically use fetch these days, but with Axios you can actually easily manage the header, and we're gonna later have to attach our Bira token to the API calls. So I'm gonna use Axios in this one. Also, I installed React Navigation because then we can have a little stack navigation and switch between the login page and our insight page. And for that, we also need to run Expo install React Native screens, React Native safe area context. And finally, we're gonna add the Expo secure store. So that is the most important part probably, because this is the package that we're gonna use to actually store our JWT once we get it from the API. And to use that, there's actually a little block here for the configuration that we should use. So in our app.json under iOS config, we should use uses. No, I think we actually need the full config block. Let's check this out. iOS, yes, there's not even a config block. So let's put this into our config. For Android, I think there's no other usage, and we will see it's basically pretty easy. We can just set items and get items in an asynchronous way. We just have to make sure that we're using async await, but that shouldn't be a problem for us, right? So with that in place, we can already run npx expo start, and we can run this on the web. Do we want to run a web or iOS? Let's go for iOS today. There we go. Our preview. Okay, so this is gonna be pretty boring so far. And what we're gonna do now is we basically want to create a login page and an insight page, and that insight page needs to be protected. So in order to protect that page and to have this logic, we're gonna add a context around our app for our authentication, and that context will be, well, where do we want to store this? Let's create a new folder. I love it that Expo, that Visual Studio Code is not doing the folders for me. I really hate this. So I'm gonna do app context. By the way, you can actually have a slash in there, so it generates. I could even have done this for the file, by the way. So I'm gonna call this auth context.tsx, and then we're gonna get a bit more space here. And then let's begin by a few imports and an auth props interface. So that's gonna be the interface of our provider. That will make it a lot easier to interact and get all the information. We can actually put this to the side. We also import the secure storage, and what I also added right to the beginning is hello. Oh, I love it when my keyboard is not working anymore. A key. So this will be the key under which we're going to find our JWT or whatever you want to store in secure storage. The API URL, I'm just going to use my own API at api.develop-apps. You can also do this for testing. You can check out the documentation here. Pretty much what we're going to use is a post to users to register a user, and a /auth to get a JWT, and then some of the other calls just to test if we are allowed to make a request. By the way, you can also run this locally. You can find all of this on Galaxies.dev in the tutorial link below this video. So then we're gonna add our auth context, an easy export. So we got our use auth that we can import just like a hook in our pages, and then the actual const auth provider begins. Just the default setup for a context. I'm gonna just add any in here, and then this provider will manage a few things, but most importantly, in the end, we're gonna return this object which wraps the context around all of the children. And now we just need to make sure that we implement all the functionalities and also cover the state. So the state in here is our auth state. It will be either null, so this would be the initial case as we initialize it with that, or have some information about the token and a flag for authenticated. So looks more complicated than it actually is. It is just a state. Now we need 2 or maybe we need 3 functions in here. We need login, we need register, and we need sign out. So we got the whole flow from our login page to the other pages. So let me bring them in one by one. We're gonna start with probably the registration because that's actually the easiest call. So to register our users, we just need to make a post request using Axios to our API URL/users and pass the email and password to it. Nothing else, a standard registration. And by the way, everything that we do goes to our value here. We just need to make sure that we follow this interface. So we need to call this on register, and then the value would be happy. Now, once we log in, it gets interesting because in the login case, let's grab this. We can pretty much start with that again. So we need email and password again for the login. We're making a post request to the auth endpoint this time. And now once we get back the data here, we're gonna first of all update our state. So I'm gonna say const result in this case because we're actually interested in it. We're gonna add the token that we get back from the API to our state. And we're gonna say, okay, the user is now authenticated. And you can already imagine that in the end, we're gonna do the opposite. We log out the user, we're gonna reset that back to 0. Now, the important part of the JWT authentication is that you're gonna attach that header or the key or the token or whatever you wanna call it to all the future requests that you make to the API to show that you are authenticated. And we can do this by using Axios. And that's why I installed it in the beginning. This is a bit harder with fetch and to implement an interceptor. With Axios, we can just say default headers common equals this. And then for every request that we do with Axios, our token will be easily attached. And we can also have more sophisticated logic with Axios. But that is basically everything that we need, or at least for my API. If you have a different API that you're using, make sure some expect a token, some expect it in a different way, but usually it's in the authorization header and then BIRA and the token. Now, what we also want to do, of course, at this point is store the token so we got it next time when we start the app because it might still be valid. So we now use the secure store from Expo and say set item async. And to this function, we're gonna pass a key, which we defined up there because I don't like to have strings in here. I don't wanna make a typo and then I'm not loading the key or I'm not setting it correctly. So I'm gonna use my const here. And then the value is of course result.data.token. Cool, and then we have stored this and we can just return the result to whoever is interested in this. Otherwise, we can just return our error again, and that's pretty much it. Now, once we want to log out the user, we just need to do the whole opposite of this. We don't need to make an HTTP call, by the way, to the API. That's not required. But what we need is delete the item, reset the header, and then reset our authentication state. So once we got all of these 3 things in place, the user is pretty much logged out. And at the top level of our app, we're gonna check for the authentication state. So if the state changes, we're gonna automatically render our login page instead of the inside area again. And now we just need to make sure that we're actually putting everything in here. So on login, on logout, logout. And then we also should have the auth state in here. Perfect. Now, there's one more thing that we need to take care of, and that is once we start the application. So we are writing the item to storage, we're not loading, we're deleting it, but we are not loading it. So let's add a use effect to our auth provider, which will be called right when our application starts. So there we go. Oh, it's hard to have the right amount of brackets. Oh, god damn, I should just... Okay, second try. We don't have any dependencies for our use effect today. We're just gonna implement a load token because that's going to be an asynchronous function, and I'm just going to call this afterwards from here. So that's the setup we want to have. And now what we need is, of course, grabbing the token from our secure storage. So on load, we check, is there a token? And if we do get back a token, let's put a little lock in here so we can later see this. Stored token. And if we do have that token, we of course can just say, okay, then we're going to use this for our headers, and we're going to also update our state with that information, because then we can immediately log in our user. And with that setup, you have done 99% of the work for building a JWT of your React Native application. Now we just need to put this to work, but that part's going to be pretty easy. So let's move over to our, what do we want to move? We probably need some pages. So if we need pages, let's create a new folder. I'm going to call this screens. I'm going to do a new file, login.tsx, and also home.tsx. So React Native functional export, React Native functional export component. So those pages will be implemented in a second. For now, we just need like the dummy implementation, and we can head over to our app.tsx, which is currently the entry point. And now it begins. We're gonna wrap our whole application in the just created auth provider. And now we could have the stack and screens in here, but I kind of like to have like my own little layout, and we could probably have this in a different file, but for now I'm just going to do it in here. So I'm just going to call this layout, and then we're going to use the navigation container to build our navigation. So navigation container that will be wrapped around everything, and in here we're going to have our layout. Great. Now we just need a bit more for the layout, of course. So if we want to create the simple push stack navigation, we're going to use create native stack navigator. So that is our stack. And within the navigation container, please put the brackets around this. Come on. Inside of the navigation container, we can now say stack.navigator. And within that stack navigator, we're going to define the different screens of our app. So as we want to make this dependent on the authentication state, we're going to now use our hook that we added, which exports the auth state and on logout. We're going to get this from use authentication. So that is also why this statement can't be up here, because then we don't have access to the authentication provider yet. The layout is a child of the auth provider, so we can actually access it through the context. That is the important part here to make the logic work. And now we can say, okay, what's the auth state dot authenticated? If we are authenticated, we're gonna of course show the inside area. In my case, that's just the home component. So home component would be home. Sorry. Okay, please add the import. There we go. And in the other case, which means we're not authenticated, we're gonna use stack.screen. And that is gonna be the login, and also component login. Okay, so still an error message. If you exit, yeah, we probably need to restart Metro. Also, can you please just not put this on one line? That looks horrible. Nobody can see this. There we go. Okay. Additionally, we probably want to have for the homepage a little button to lock out the user. So you can do this with the navigation by just setting the options to an object, and then for header right, we can pass in a button or whatever we want. And the cool thing is, at this point, we have the onLockout function, so we don't even need to do some manual injection or whatever in the inside page. We can just do this from here and manage everything from here. And really, this line is all the magic we need to protect our app. So let me save this, and then I probably feel like we should. I could have probably just pressed restart. That would have been enough. But anyway, now we restarted and everything should come together. But of course, we don't really have a login screen, so we should focus on that and quickly implement that. So for the login, what we need is, of course, 2 input fields for email and password. And we're gonna also get on login and on register from our use auth hook. Is it already starting? Let's see again, let's refresh. Yeah, here's the login page, that's good. That's good news, we're on the right track now. So the cool thing is, because we have the API calls and the token handling all inside of our provider, our functions here for the actual login and registration are pretty easy, because we just need to call on register or on login with email and password, and then either show a result or pretty much do nothing, because that will update the auth state and our app, our auth state, will automatically switch to the login area. Additionally, I made a little change here, so automatically after register I call login, because my API has no kind of like verification of the email. So with that in place, let's quickly build our login view. For the view, we definitely want to have some kind of styling. So let's put this here. And then I'm gonna add, can you please import the style sheet? No, of course you can't. Why should you? So let's go to React, actually to React Native. Text doesn't exist. Oh yeah, text, I'm not using text anymore. Text is uncool. For the view, so I'm gonna use a simple view. Let me bring this in because it's actually gonna be quite boring. It's just a standard view setup. But of course I should put some brackets around this. And I'm also gonna add a few styles. And then I'm gonna walk you through what we just did here. So here we got a simple container. The first container, do we actually have a container styling? Yeah, we just align all the items in the center for now. I'm gonna use a little image from Galaxies up here. It's of course not something you would display in your application. And then our form here has a little gap between the elements and is using 60% of the width. We got the text inputs on change. We're gonna use set email or set password. And for password, we've also set secure text entry to make sure that this actually looks like a password input. Cool. Besides that, we have our 2 buttons for login and registration, and we can even try them. So sign in, alert, user not found. So that's good. We're getting the alert message from the API here. Create account, can't create user with those credentials. Perfect, that's perfect. That's exactly what we wanted to see. Can we try, let's try something. So I'm gonna add a use effect here to make a simple API call. Let me grab the auth context. Let's do something like get all users. We're gonna try this. Const test call async. So this is just a verification that our stuff actually works. We're gonna do this. We're gonna, come on, just the whole word. Test call and no dependencies. So what we want to do is we want to check if we can get a result right here on this login page, and I highly doubt it. Because, let's see, where are we? Axios request failed with status code 401, which basically means we are not authenticated to make this request. And that is good news, because that means we're trying to access something from the API, but we're not allowed to do that. So now let's create an account. I'm gonna use a.a.de, whatever, and then a super secure password. Okay, create account. Can't create users. It's my password. Create account. Does my email have to be like lowercase or something? I don't know. And why is the first letter always uppercase? I don't want that. Can you please just make it lowercase? I'm just gonna do b@b.de. Oh yeah, that account already exists. I'm using the real API, not my local API, right? Let me quickly switch this. I'm gonna go to localhost 5K. There we go. I should still get the same error. Yes, I do. But now I should be able to actually create my fake account. Nice, there we go. That was my fake account sign up. I should now be able to go back and I should be able to use my login now. So we've seen before that login did not work, but now login should actually work. So let's see. Yeah, there we go. We also get back the, what is this? Auth context 41. What did we log out here? 41, I don't actually know. The store token probably. No, that's actually not the store token. But anyway, it did log something. Now, the interesting question is, if we put the call we got here on the login screen now into our home screen, would we see a result? I actually hope so, because otherwise our whole authentication did not work. So let's hit save. And I don't want this log. Where is this log coming from? Login 16. Oh, it's still calling the stuff here. Let's out comment that. And on the home page, I actually want to have result.data. So, this is it. We are getting data here on the login page. So if we wanted to make this simple, I could change this view now to be something like this. So with a little use state for users, then I'm calling all the users and then I'm displaying them in a list. I actually only have one. Yeah, I did set the key. Each child in a list should have a unique key. Oh yeah, it's underscore ID. I'm sorry. That should fix it. But if I would change this, and I could now hopefully kill this. Did I kill it? And then go back to Expo Go. Open the app again. And we've seen we're shortly on the login screen, but then we're retrieving the token from storage and we're automatically logged in because of the logic we implemented in our app.tsx. And that is pretty much everything you need to make this work. And I could now switch this out easily from localhost back to the real API. Go ahead and sign in. If that account still exists, I don't know. Undefined, yeah, probably that doesn't exist. I don't know what my account was. Was it like this.com? Oh man. I think I had an a at a.de. I don't know why it's making uppercase. Please, Apple Simulator, could you just stop that? I don't like that because my API might check that. Oh, come on. I'm really not allowed to do anything in here. Well, if you have an account for the API, which you can create for free, by the way, just use it as described in here. It's not a problem. We are also using this in most of the courses. I don't know, my api.developbetterapps.com. Probably I should just have restarted my application. Oh, we're getting into a lot of trouble here. Let's do this one final time. Yeah, well, looks like today I'm not allowed at my own API to log in, but you're gonna have more luck. So with my local API, it did definitely work better. Probably there's a problem right now with the API. I'm gonna check that out. But right now we have the perfect starting point for your React Native application with JWT login. This auth provider and the context we're wrapping around the app is really everything you need to check. We're listening to the, we're reacting to the authentication state and either display our home screen or something else. And this could of course be another layout or another stack navigation. So if you have in the inside area a tab bar or something else, you could also just have that in here. And with that, we're finished with our React Native app for today. I hope you enjoyed this quick run through of how you can add JWT authentication to your React Native application. It really comes down to the provider and having the authentication state at the top level and then managing the different routes or navigation stacks in your app. And really, that's it. It's not too complicated once you got that set up in place. So I hope you enjoyed it. Again, code on galaxies.dev, which you can check out below. And of course, hit the like button and stay subscribed for all the future videos. I hope you have a great week with awesome code and I will catch you next time. So until then, happy coding, Simon.